Call the meeting to order at 12:08. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Fred shirt. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Trustee Berman? Here. Trustee Blucher?
Here.
Trustee McNeil? Here. Trustee Pierce?
Present.
Trustee Mason?
Here.
Trustee Peterson? Present. Mayor Gurke?
Present. Everyone's here. No trustees are attending remotely. Happy Memorial Day weekend. I promise that hopefully we have a hard stop at 3 o'clock today, so everybody can begin their summer hours. Summer hours have started at the village today for village staff through Labor Day weekend. There is a memorial service at the Hillside Cemetery at 8:30 on Monday for those that are interested in attending. And one item, it's probably the time to address it now on the mayoral report, but the village administrator, myself, have been very conscious and sometimes get stressed out by our inability to, we're both working 2 jobs and return as many phone calls or email correspondence as possible. So we're trying to work on a procedure, either myself with Rachel or Chief Gutchow with his assistant Gina, and make a schedule available to the trustees so they can either schedule through Calendly or through our assistants, because we are not trying to avoid the calls. Sometimes you just get tied up and can't get back. So I just wanted to address that. And we are very conscious of it and trying to figure out a solution that works best for everybody to contact us. Obviously, any case of emergency, call us or text us right away. So I just wanted to address that because we have been discussing trying to come up with a plan for that for the board and staff. Any citizens wishing to address the boards? Anything said up there?
Yeah, we have one.
Oh, it's fine. All right, the rules are, don't be rude, you have 3 minutes. Those are the rules. We have Paul Darby here to address the board regarding owner advisor.
I'll be quick. I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to talk. I'm a member of the community. We're moving into another house now under construction, but I wanted to pay my respect to Jeff and to you, Scott, too, for the choice. With Frederick Quinn, I think it's a good choice. You've got a great contractor on board. But I also wanted to just say that I'm here, or our firms here, we're willing to help you support the public works and village hall projects in any way.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, we have quite a long list of consent agenda items. Are there any requests to remove any of those items from the consent agenda? All right, if not, I'd entertain a motion in a second on the consent agenda. So move. Motion, trustee Blucher, second, trustee McNeil. Roll call, please. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Berman?
Yes.
Blucher?
Yes.
McNeil?
Yes.
Pierce?
Aye.
Mason?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item on regular business is consideration and approval of payments of accounts payable as prepared by staff in the amounts of $447,124.22. Do I have a motion in a second?
So moved.
Motion, trustee McNeil, second, trustee Peterson. Any discussion regarding this item? All right, roll call, please.
Berman?
Yes.
Blucher?
Yes.
McNeil?
Yes.
Pierce?
Aye.
Mason?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
All right, 6 voting yes, motion carries. Next on to the main reason we're here is to discuss capital projects. As we all recall, we were here 6 months ago or so discussing capital projects, kind of prioritizing those projects, giving staff some direction on the board's, I guess, limits or caps on authority for spending on capital projects. We've obviously had some changeover in personnel since that meeting. And it has not, obviously not changed our diligence and speed to getting the project done. That being said, I reviewed the notes last night from our prior meeting. I think obviously based on our recent discussions with FQC as construction manager and other vendors we've interviewed, our priorities right now have seemed to be obviously the village hall and the public works. After reviewing my notes last time, it appears that the general direction of the board or recommendation was to look at a $2 million cap on the public or on the village hall building. And then there was a range of anywhere from 8 million to 12 million discussion regarding the public works facility. Since that time, we had engaged in long and sometimes contentious, long negotiations trying to secure easements for Grimm Road. Had been working, trying to obtain grants for Grimm Road through the Council of Mayors. We were unsuccessful in obtaining those easements for Grimm Road in the timeframe needed to receive those grants from the Council of Mayors, which was an 80-20 grant from the Council of Mayors to us. Given the scope and the cost of Grimm Road and the scope and the cost of the utilities in Grimm Road, which could exceed $10 million, I made the decision, and obviously it's for board discussion and approval, to pull back on the Grimm Road discussion and to maybe even pull back on that project until we get full funding from a government agency outside of the village of Antioch. Figuring that alone, that money would save money in our capital budget, allow it to use us to use it for other projects, whether that be downtown or infrastructure. But at that point, it did not seem fiscally sound to be expending that much money on Grimm Road. Now, admittedly, we have probably spent, I'm guessing, half $500,000 in consulting expenses, engineering expenses for that project, which are still going to be valid and can be used for these processes of applying for grants. But I think it's time to pivot in that regard. As part of that discussion, there was a large line item that we saw at the last capital meeting of $2 to $4 million for the easements and the access points to get to what, at that point, we were discussing the location for our public works building. After discussion with staff, and now for discussion with the board, is looking at properties that we already owned where utilities were at the property, which included a property on Route 83 and the Bittner property, which is currently, as you know, deeded to or assigned to or given a license to the township to build their projects subject to them passing a referendum. It is our belief internally that the Bittner property at this point makes the most sense for us to explore for a public works facility. Not only are the utilities there, there is a large enough area of 12 acres, is a large enough area that we could utilize the east portion of that property and have just no impact on any residential areas in the location, including keeping a large buffer for park land or whatever we decide. It also saves millions of dollars for the temporary utilities and temporary access to the building, which I think Zeta will go through in a presentation and show the board and staff what type of funds we have available in the bond and in the capital. And then we have to make some decisions. Do we want to use bond money right away? Do we want to use that mixture of other funds that are available to us? And then figure out prioritizing what projects we may see in the future in downtown Antioch. There'll also be some discussion, I believe, from Administrator Gutchow, Assistant Administrator Moran, about grant opportunities that we have applied for recently for different areas, including bike paths in the band shell area, which are still pending. And then hopefully by the end of this meeting, we will have good direction for staff on the next phase of these capital projects and moving forward, and answer any questions that the trustees and public may have in that regard. anything I missed on that, Jeff, or Jim, or Zeta?
No.
Okay, and then, I know Mary potentially was out today because she had a grandchild on the way. She was born last night, so I guess she's understandably not here today, but we need to discuss the Parks Master Plan, the priorities of the Parks Master Plan, the OSLED grants that we are going to be seeking, and then figure out how we are going to not only fund those plans through capital or through the cannabis money, but also a schedule of those projects for the next, potentially 5 or 10 years to move those along. So with that, Zeta, are you gonna present first?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's Jim ready.
Are you ready?
Do I
So,
use
and
my
again,
laptop?
So I know we have these listing, A, B, C, and D. Okay, so funding sources, project listing, and Parks Master Plan are all gonna kind of be under one umbrella. And then the prioritization is, kind of the last part of it. So I will give you the floor, Zeta.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board. So this is the agenda in my presentation today. I'm gonna go over the tax levy, so every board member and anyone attending today can see the lines for the tax levy and what those funds are used for. I'm also presenting today all the major sources of revenue that the village of Antioch collects. I'm gonna still include the property taxes, so you can see that most of the funding comes for operation apart from the tax levy. Also, we're gonna have a discussion on park expenditures, showing the park expenditures before we issued the bond. That means that with the park expenditures, we have an accounting system that allows for project accounting. There were times before I got here that sometimes codes were used for the park, other times they weren't. I'm placing a disclosure on this expenditure sheet that I will present today, showing that the items prior to bond 22 are only the ones that have had a project code. And those are the only ones that I can stand here today and say that I find in the system and the dollar amount that was corrected. Anything that went through the system that did not have a project code for the park, at this time it would be time consuming for me to go back and find it. I'm also gonna discuss the available funds, the different sources of funds. The last two are very critical, and when we get there, I'll explain to you why. But the allocations of funds and direction from the board and the privatization is very important today as we come in here to finish paying the park and the completion of the park. I need direction from the board and understanding the decision that we will make today, the effect of looking into the Vintner property, it not being in the central business district, and it not being right now identified in the bond ordinance. I'm also gonna show the savings from Ground Road versus Vintner property for the public works building. The numbers I did get from Ground Road, which includes the utility, are numbers that the former village administrator had provided us. Next slide. So this is the tax levy for calendar year 23 that gets paid in fiscal year end 25. As you all know, the state of Illinois is always 1 year behind in the tax levy. So this levy is for year 23. We audit for the audit. We do the tax levy for the audit, for civil defense. The corporate fund is another word for general fund, is anything that in the general fund that we include in revenues to subsidize the other side of the income statement, which are the expenses. We levy for IMRF. It has to go to IMRF expenditures. We have the police pension tax levy that gets put into the general fund and then it goes to the police pension fund. We also levy for police protection, which means the payroll, the expenditures. We also have right now on the tax levy is a recap. Lake County went back and found, to make a long story short, money that's been owed to the village and other communities. We also levy for Social Security. That money is used for that. And then the tort is used for our professional liability expenditures. And our total this year for the tax levy is 4.3 million. So I just wanted to identify the tax levy. These are the lines that we levied thus far for the village of Antioch. The other options as a finance director that I can add in there at this time is not necessary because the split is good for what we use it for. Next slide. These are the major sources of revenue for the village. There are other revenues, but they're very immaterial. So the top is the tax levy. Those are the taxes. As you can see, income tax, sales tax is our largest revenue source. We have state use tax. We have the cannabis tax. We anticipating, and this number right now is very conservative for the new cannabis tax. And then we have road and bridge that we collect. We also have the property replacement tax, the video gaming tax, the vehicle tax, and other taxes, so small little taxes that we get. If you move the slide further down, you can see that this is the entire utility tax. This is the money that goes into the capital fund and are the only sources from the general fund that pay for any capital. I just want to make it real clear that right now, the utility tax gets moved at the end of the year. It goes to the capital fund and all capital expenditures are subsidized, taken care of by the utility tax. Everything else above that line in the middle revenues are the sources of revenue we use to operate and do anything else in the general fund. That's all general fund. Any questions on this slide? Next slide. Now, this is the history of the park expenditures. Again, I made a disclosure on the top. It says project code only. I can only identify and present to you the things that have project code. We run the project code to the system. The system brings up all the expenditures that have use of project code that I, at this time, could identify as expenditures to park. I also did the years of the expenditures for that area of the park. I identified the dollar amounts all the way to the right. I show you what fund they're coming from. In the middle of the page, I summarize the fund. So any items that I could identify that are related to the park from the general fund were for $52,000, which tells me more than likely it came out of one of those major revenue sources and not property taxes. The central business district, those funds were used, part of those funds were used from the central business district, and that is legal because that is where the park sits. The capital fund, again, is money that comes from the utility tax, which comes from the general fund, no property taxes. I have my staff investigate to find out what are the costs for this cost of $798,000. Most of the things were for soil remediation. Those dollar amounts were strictly for soil remediation and some other miscellaneous items. At the bottom of the page, after the bond issue, we have paid into the park $7.6 million. So the total park expenditures, as you can see, is $8.4 million plus dollars. Any questions? Yes.
On the bond payments, does that include any grant fund, or where any grant funds that have been used for this?
So what's happening right now, we'll get to the chart, the slide that says available funds.
Sure.
So just so I can add to that. So we've been charging to the SMC grant some of the bond money. So what happens is last fiscal year, the direction was on the village administrator to put it back onto the general fund. I recently did an audit before we closed the budget and identified that we should really return those funds to the proper funds they belong to. That includes the bond. So money went back to capital, money went back to the bond, and money went back to the central business district. If you look in your budgets, you will see in the general fund that I detailed what I was doing in those transactions. I'm showing a transfer from the general fund and specifically to each fund it belonged to, and the reason why I did that, because I feel this is the correct way to return these funds The general fund, you could do anything with the general fund, but they really belong to the funds we took it out from, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, just to summarize, the top 3/4 of that is $798,000 or so. And you're saying most of that was for soil remediation?
Yes, I had staff pull the invoices.
Okay, and then the bottom part, 8 million or the 7,600,000 odd
It's all
dollars.
construction.
That's bond repayments?
Yeah. No, that's, all the construction project for boiler, whoever's involved in those vendors, but this is coming out of the bond.
That's what we've paid
Yeah,
out so far?
yeah, that's-
Okay, that's not payments to the bonds, that's
No.
what we paid out for the park, so.
That's correct.
So we're at about, 9.8 million, 9.6 million
For the total part
for the total cost so far?
is 8.4. This is 7.6 plus the 798, the total in the bottom is so.
Oh, okay, per total there. All right,
Okay, now, can I get these in slides? 'Cause
I
can barely-
emailed them, I'm sorry to everybody.
Did you?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Oh, I got them, I can barely
Yeah.
read. I gotta get.
Yeah, you can open up your laptops, I don't know, since we were having problems, this is a PDF, it's not the PowerPoint slide, so it doesn't look as clear, so I apologize, we can't open up PowerPoint.
Does that include the purchase price of the land?
That's correct,
But what purchase price was roughly what, just under 600?
the land,
Yeah,
oh yeah, I so did include it, I don't know, that was years ago, so I refrain from
well,
answering.
years ago, that was after 19, so I mean, is that in that
I wasn't here
600,000? or-
19, so I can't vouch for that, but I could find out for you.
Because we want that included in the total price of the park, correct?
If it's not on there, then use the project code, that's why it's not on
Oh,
there.
here we go, it's a color.
Yeah, no, that was part of the
That-
part of the difficulties they had with trying to tabulate these costs is there were some costs that hit that didn't have a project code assigned. It wasn't a system that we were using prior to Zeta implementing them.
No, I understand that, but honestly, any real look at what this final park cost is gonna be, it needs to include what we paid for the land.
I would guess that
So
this does not,
that-
that's
that's not
property,
included.
that's a property acquisition.
3/4 of that 800,000 would be.
It wouldn't be
land.
because I would know what it is, and
Yeah,
I don't
no.
know what you paid for. the
I
land.
think this does not include property acquisition. I
Go
think
back
this
and
is just,
look
this
at
is
it.
We could go
strictly,
back, it's just as time consuming.
yeah, this is strictly design and construction costs, I believe.
Yeah, we can go back and pull the files as much, but like I said, that's why I made that footnote disclosure. That is only anything that came through with a project code.
I understand all that, but I think we need to put that in there because that is a major part of those initial costs. Which I mean, it's over, close to matching that probably,
What do you mean?
the purchase cost of the land.
It's matching what?
The 800,000, so we're gonna take a real look at what we've spent so far for that park. We have to include the purchase price of the land.
500,000.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
Well, fine, let's put a lot in there. We need to have that.
We'll add it in.
And then you gotta put in the 3 pollution tests they had that Jim Hanks did. I mean, I can't, the guy unmentionable, sorry.
Well,
Jim
you
mentionable.
can say his name. So let's
Okay,
let's
what is
do
it
this right
that you
now.
need,
Yeah.
Ed?
You can
'Cause
say
that
his
doesn't have a
name.
project code, that's why it's not on there.
Yeah,
It's
but
not
there's
disparaging
three-
to say someone's
There's
name.
Three
3
what?
tests that were done.
Three
So
tests.
you gotta add those, 3
And the
pollution
land.
tests that were on there. And I don't know when I don't know if I can mention a name or not.
Yeah, you can mention
mention-
Davis, it's not disparaging it, yeah, you can mention.
Okay. There was 3 tests done, that all has to be in there, because there's some pollution mediation in there that's gotta be added into these figures that aren't in there.
Okay,
Because it was like, I didn't like this one, let's get another one, I didn't like this one, then we gotta do one by where that memorial place is gonna be towards the back, that had to be done, that's not in there.
I think the last one from, was done, on, at least in our term, at the Veterans Memorial spot was done.
That was separate from,
Yeah, and I believe, but they did that, that's what I'm looking for.
Which one?
No.
that was for the foundation.
They donated it to us. I don't believe they did not charge us for that one. That was part of the construction contractor donation.
Not part of this.
Manhard and whoever did the soil test over there did not charge us for those. They did that as part of a charitable donation to the project.
Okay, next page, thank you. So these are the projects right now that I've been given direction that we are active or we hope to proceed with. Dennis was gracious to give me and work on giving me that number left for the downtown open space on AKA the park. That's the balance, that's 7 million, a little over 7 million left. We got the public works building, Dennis is the last number that I was given for public works building and board, 12 million in the, at the Bittner property. And Village Hall, there's no direction to change that number, 2 million. And the last two is really our annual road program. Part of it comes from the capital fund, the other one from MFT, and that's already in the budget. On the right side, I'm giving you the funding that's available. We have $13.5 million in bond cash available still. We have the ARPA, a little less than 2 million. We have MFT, which is in the budget, Rebuild Illinois. We don't have anything budgeted for that. The capital fund, we do have for 400,000 this year for road program. And then we have the East Business District with $3 million that if you look at your treasurer's report, I have moved the money so it could be very transparent that you have the 3 million for capital cash, I call it. And Central Business District, again, that's fund balance money. We set aside 2.5 million for the water sewer if you to spend in these projects. And we have 3 million lined up for the capital spending. So we have a total right now of $26.1 million that we can use for projects. If we go to the next slide, Jim. My challenge or our challenge right now is that we're getting close to making a payment to finish the park probably in August, September. We know in discussing with Dennis and we're reporting to the state, the ARPA funding, we have to constantly report to them, where are you, where's the money, what is our intention? And we hope to spend the money in the next couple of months for the ARPA program and then shut that down because we have to the end of December to earmark it as they requested it. So like that, they know that we're gonna spend the money for that. I put question marks on that because we know that almost 2 million will cover the 7 million, but the direction needed is going to be, if we are going to save the money, the bond money, to pay the property at Bittner, there's no issue with me taking money out of the Central Business District, General Fund, and Water Sewer to complete that task or that payment. The problem is that if the bond ordinance is not able to add the Bittner property, or we can't move the Bittner property into the Central Business District, now we're stuck with the money for the bond. And what are the things that qualify in these projects, which I would say maybe would call, but to use bond money. So that's the discussion and the concern that I bring to all of you today for direction on how we can move, how quickly, and Jimmy could talk about that with the Bittner property.
So we have already done preliminary research and work with outside experts to ensure that we will be able to reallocate and amend the bond ordinance to allow for the bond funds to be clearly used in the Bittner property. There are two means to do it. One is amending the bond ordinance, the other one is expanding the actual underlying district. We believe that the more efficient method is actually for the amendment of the bond ordinance, but we are available to do it either way. Lawyers get freaked out by any form of certainty, but I give it about a 95% chance that it could be done. But
And I'll give Zeta credit for bringing up the amending the bond ordinance, because that was brought up at the staff meeting, and we were going down the path of expanding the business district, and this seems like a much less path of resistance to just include it. Zeta, I had a question about the last slide. I don't know if you can go back.
You want me to report?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, all right, so obviously the difference between the two is about $4 million between what you have, I'll say earmarked versus what's available.
Yeah.
That money on the right,
Mhm.
does for me and does that deplete our general fund and capital fund if all that money's spent, or what would that leave as a balance in those accounts, empty the kitty for the
So
future?
the general fund will still have $4 million. And our intent is after we do the last adjusting journal entries for the year, working on the audit right now,
Mhm.
we hope to have surplus. I believe this can be a good surplus to add more to general fund. So that's just liquid, non-restricted cash, and in general fund, we have, same thing for the water sewer. The water sewer still have $2 million available in reserve. So we're not touching reserves or any of this. With the central business district, what you see is what we have in those.
Okay, same with East Business
Yeah.
District. What about the capital fund, like a separate capital fund? Do we have a?
No, the capital fund usually, the history in Antioch is they really deplete all the capital fund. The funding really comes from the general fund. We've had a little bit of funding in there because not all projects have been completed.
Yeah.
But the idea of moving the surplus will help that issue.
So what we've talked about today tonight is, I think we're both big proponents of at the end of the year, when we see what the annual surplus is from the operating budget, instead of leaving it in the general fund, which somebody will find a way to spend it, that we sweep that money into a separate capital account, that we just keep building on our surpluses. And then also maybe look at, obviously keep adding to the reserves. We had $500,000 this year, that reserve fund. And then the third one always is the, based on whatever the report is for the police pension fund to close that gap. Those are the three areas I think we should take that additional money, the surplus, so to speak, and sweep it into those accounts. So it's not sitting there on the books like it's available to spend on operations.
Absolutely. Any questions? I know the discussion today is, how we're gonna proceed, and can only tell we can really my concern is the timing of amending the bond ordinance and the final payment to the park.
And one thing that's not on this list that's relevant for today is a lot of them on the left or the right for the parks, right?
So the next slide, I know I heard the video, the audio, but I just wanted to present the savings layers I heard on the video, the audio, I couldn't be at the last meeting, about the savings between Rim Road. The top two numbers is the Pi Village Administrator, I given those numbers on what the Rim Road would cost, Rim Road utility, and what I was given as a final amount for the public works building if you build it in Rim Road. Right now, the direction with the bid of property is the cost is $12 million. Anybody jump in and add if there's been a change to that?
I'm sorry, what are you asking? We could jump in and say this.
The comparison between if we build the public works building at Rim Road or do we build it at the property? What the cost would be at Rim Road and what the cost would be at the Vintner.
Yeah, I'm getting that. I'm just processing through my mind the fact that we never really finally, we had a proposal presented to us for $15 million, but the board
Well,
was
that's
not
less.
very receptive of it, to be very
That's
polite.
the last time I was here.
So 15 million was the number presented, so that's your baseline, I understand that. But for the Bittner property, we never came to the conclusion on what the price we were looking at there. And I think that's kind of what we need to decide as a board, because, I mean, we can either go back to a $15 million building, or we can go back to, God's
Sure.
forsaken pole barn.
So I think what this kind of indicates is the numbers that Zeta was given with the Grim Road Utilities and Public Works versus the spread of between 8 to 12 million. We haven't decided as a board where we're gonna go, but that would be the difference between the worst case scenario on each. So, then we can, obviously that 12 million is not a number set in
That's
stone,
not a
but just
solid
showing
number.
the
It's
worst
just an
case
estimate.
scenario,
Yeah.
that the difference would be, you see $12 million in savings. So
Yeah.
well, I think that's relevant for our discussion today with FQC on whether we're gonna fall at a $5 million public works or a max $12 million public works.
I think we need to kind of land there today now that we've got Frederick Quinn on board.
Okay.
Because they need to know what dollar amount to start driving the project.
Sure.
forward.
Well, I'm good with $8 million.
I don't think-
I've heard 12 million, so I would presume we're in the middle at 10.
That's how I like to, hey, that's how I like to move these meetings. All right, that sounds good to me. We're
I was
good.
gonna say 3/4 of that would sound good at like 9 million, because you know it's going, once we bid, it's gonna be high.
I mean, you say go for 10 and, you know, we know how this project process goes. Everybody's like, oh, inflation hit again and come
Right.
up to 11 and, you know, so. But I think the staff needs to know Jeff and Dennis working with FQC, because we did sign off or agreed to today to do the initial $20,000 preliminary work with cost estimating, you know, giving them their framework to work with that.
And I'm also just based off of conversations with FQC leading up till today, looking at the current needs of public works and then building a little bit of capacity. They've been very direct, as of our architects, that working towards a $12 million price tag on a public works facility is gonna pose challenges. There's certainly gonna have to be some significant value engineering, and probably changes to the schematic of the building. You know, forcing Dennis to look at having to, you know, cut out a hose bib here on the interior of the building, or cut out a wall here to try to cut some costs. But to get that building to $10 million based off of what we give them as a need is not realistic. I just think people need to understand, based on today's cost figures and construction costs, is that, you know, we're not talking about just cutting down small square footage or changing the roof system. You know, you get down to $10 million on a scalable basis, you're probably cutting, I don't know, that's right, 25 to 30% of that building out.
Yeah, they immediately said, you know, you can cut the mechanics area. So I can't, you know, stop maintaining the police fleet or public works.
Mayor?
So it's-
I hate to say this because,
You got the.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Scott, you finished and Brett's got the next.
I think we need to decide what type of building we really want. I think that's where the savings is, and what type of building we want. Do we want the brick and cement walled and glass ceiling terraced building that they're looking at on Public Works building, or do we want something along the lines of what I presented? I think those are two different animals and two different costs. And
And they're aware of that.
Yes, and they've been clear in their conversation with that too, trustee. We've talked to them about metal facades versus brick facades versus, you know, standing panel facades. And they're of the opinion that while there's gonna be some cost savings involved with changing those materials, it's not gonna be a $2 million cost savings by changing materials. You might, you know, they work some numbers, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, changing from the standing panel to, you know, a steel building, probably talking a couple $100,000 in savings.
Yeah,
not
they
getting us to that.
typically like a 20% savings, possibly, depending on the market. And precast right now that is estimated within that quote is only like $1.8 million out of the total.
So that they're happy to work towards whatever the board is for this facility. But really the best way that the board can help staff right now is by giving us that dollar figure you're comfortable with. Because then the design team has to go to work to design the building to fit the budgetary constraints that the board allows us to work within.
Trustee Luther.
Yeah, well, first, point of order, I just want to make sure how we're handling these discussions as we go around, because I can't see anyone down there,
Yeah,
so it's kind of,
I like.
I don't want to interrupt anybody, but maybe we need to go back to doing it in order.
I like to do this as more of a roundtable open discussion, so I'll try to if I hear you, I'll say, okay, I got you next.
Yeah, but something like this, where we're talking about a major decision and spending millions, we each have to have a fair shot of saying how we feel about it, and then we can go back and have your round table.
If somebody has something to say.
Yeah, well, right, but my thought is similar to Trustee Pierce's, but it's, and I'll just use the Sequoia Creek Park as an example. You know, we went through a slew of different numbers over the 4 years, after the 3.5 years I've been on this board. And it changed, and it kept going up and up and up and up. And we bought into a design that ended up being very expensive and it's gorgeous, but what I'm getting at here is, I think we need to start lower and tell these people that, I don't care if they have to rip up that plan. That plan that they brought to us was nowhere near anything that we were ever gonna build or could afford to build. It was like the dream world of public works buildings, and we can't afford that. We have a lot of needs in town. I wanna give public works a beautiful facility, but it could be something that could be expandable down the road when more funds are available if need be, and everything else, because we kind of bought into the argument with the current park where, you know, we have this one in a lifetime opportunity to do this right, and we did it, and it's gorgeous. But we don't need to do that on a public works building or even the current village hall. So I would like to see us start at a lower amount and say, what can you do for this amount? Knowing that they're gonna come in and say, you're gonna have to do this, this, or this, and then move it up if we have to. But if we give them, any construction company, any building manager, any of them, if we say we have $12 million, they're gonna come in at $12 million plus. Because they're not gonna try to bring it down to that point, because the more money that we spend, the more money they make. So it's basically, I think we start low and see what we could get for that. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then we adjust our budget accordingly. But if we start out at the max, we're gonna get at that level or above, and then any money we have is gone, and we don't have any, why have the discussion about other capital projects? Because we're basically, it's all gone. So I think if we decide as a board and there's consensus that we want to spend it all and just give a blank check for the public works at $12 million, and let's do that. But if we want to sit there and see if we can do a bunch of projects, let's sit there and start at a lower number, whether it's 8, 9 million, and then go up from there and see, you know, if we need to. But I think we have to think outside the box. We've done that by moving off of Grim and saving ourselves some money. Let's look at, you know, we haven't seen a drawing. We haven't seen anything how it would look on Bittner. We haven't seen anything at all, and we're ready to say how much we want to spend. We're putting the cart before the horse. Let's see what it would cost for an 8 million versus a 12 million bill, so that we can make a decision, because without that, how do we decide? I mean, I understand we have these funds available, but it doesn't mean we have to spend every penny of them. So I'd rather have us start lower and then move up if we have to.
Your Honor, I have a question.
Okay,
Okay.
Jeff, and then trustee Peters.
Yeah, just to respond to that, trustee, to try to, in my mind, understand things a little bit better. Understanding that the concerns that the board has with how the park project grew. We're trying to, with the construction management team on board, we're coming at this kind of in a reverse order of how we did it the last time, right? With the park, we went out, designed this park, saw the amenities that we liked, and then really with nothing more than just having a baseline estimate in our minds, went out and did it. And that's where we came back with the price tag, I think, that exceeded what some of the board may have thought we were going to get. From this way, we're working at it backwards by telling the CM team that this is the price tag we're comfortable with, and that having that construction manager that's responsible to us to drive the architects towards a plan that will fall within that budget constraint. But we can certainly go back to re-schematic and design, but the board needs to understand that significant costs have been incurred to design the current public works facility. And to go back to square one, you know, we're probably going back and talking another, you know, $100,000 in schematic and design it, because we're talking about designing a completely different building.
I guess
size and scope.
I get that, but here's the thing, what we did on the way you described is exactly what I'm worried about. Because we did it where we picked out what we wanted on the park, got stuck with a big price tag, and then said, okay, now we either cut stuff or we spend what we have to spend. We're kind of doing the opposite now, and we're going to the upper end and saying, okay, well, we don't want to spend more than this, so now give us a building that fits to that. What I'm saying is, we went to them and said, these are all our needs in their study. They came up with a $15 million building. Now we're saying, okay, just moving it over to Bittner, how does that cut $3 million? I don't know if it's the same building, the same design, what you're talking about. You couldn't cut $3 million off it just by taking that design they get on paper and bringing it over to Bittner. So the thing is if we started a lower amount, so we want to be in this range. And then if we have to add on, we add on from there.
I want to acknowledge trustee Peterson had a question also.
My question was, how much is it gonna cost to redo an entire new.
So that, okay, so I believe,
We have to stop spending on rails.
correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the 3 million is what we already told them they have to cut from the building, was the 3 million on that cost. I may be
Correct, and the savings that we're recognizing, so on the Grimm Road site, there's no utilities to the site. There was some redesign and engineering of lift stations and all that sort of thing that would have had to happen to accommodate the Grimm Road site construction, right? So that was a couple $1 million just for the redesign of the utilities and extension of utilities and access to where the building would go there. On the Bittner property, the utilities are run, I don't think in front of the property, but up to.
Yeah, the
or
water's
near.
nearby, the sewer is down in Windmill Creek subdivision.
So we're gonna have some cost with utilities, but they're gonna kind of pale in comparison to,
Right, but is that in addition or is that included in that 12?
well, we've included, look, our understanding from the board last time, I misunderstood, I apologize, that $12 million was the cap we should be working to, and that was all in, that was property, that was the grading, the hard costs, soft costs included with the building, desks, chairs, all those kind of things that are going into the building. So that's where we've had the architects and design team working towards that number. And they've assured us that through their cost estimating that before we go up to bid, we're gonna have a relatively certain dollar amount based on cost estimating that they're gonna do leading up to this project. There's always gonna be unanticipated surprises that come up, right? But that's where we're gonna have that contingency built in. So if you tell us $12 million is the top number, that means it's $12 million with contingencies that we have to land this project within. If it's $10 million that they say, then that's where we go.
I
Go on,
understand.
Zeta had was.
So if you recall, in November, we had a meeting and Jeff is correct about the statements making. If you recall, we all sat here and we agreed on 10 million on the project. We put the extra 2 million, as Jeff says, for contingency. So this is not a solid number. This is just us preparing for the worst case scenario. The 2 million was what the board, 10 million was what the board agreed, and the 2 million, correct, Jeff, is the contingency.
But didn't you just say that you went to the construction?
Can I talk?
We have
Yeah.
$12
Can I
million.
say something?
Okay, so I got Brent,
Hello?
I have Scott has hit up, I have Ed, in that order. Brent, Scott, Ed.
Well, I was just saying, I just thought, we told them that we're at 12 million cap. But then Zeta just said, we told them 10 million, we're putting 2 million in more above it. So our cap wasn't 10 million. We told you 10, then it should be 10 million up there, not
No.
12 million.
This is all in, right? This is
That's
all in.
all in, that's correct. That's to be safe.
So just like the park to build is $12.5 million to the
You
contractor.
have that.
The other
contingency.
difference is all the additional costs. This is 12 million, including the building, plus all those additional
Plus
costs. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's where,
Jeff
that's,
is correct.
okay. I think it's Scott and then Ed.
Oh, go ahead and let Ed talk. I understand where you're going.
Okay, Ed,
How close this is gonna be to Vanderbilt Drive? And that subdivision? Bigger property to the building itself, because that's a homeowners association. And what I've heard through a bunch of back and forth, in a 15-minute discussion, that we don't know what the construction's gonna be, but the consideration is less construction than we force down everybody else's throat that comes for a permit. So we're gonna less construction. Next to a homeowners association, if I was in that homeowners association, I'd be picketing if I had to look at an ugly steel building. So better consider when you're with your planners that nobody from any house can see a steel. If you're gonna do a steel building, I don't wanna be a part of it next to a homeowners association, because those guys have probably in Antioch the strictest homeowners association in the village. And they should be allowed to have what they pay their taxes for and live what they want to live and not look at from their backyard, a stupid ugly building or whatever. And I get you can do landscaping to hide certain stuff, but on the aspect, you make other people, and I'm just looking at the tinted window, $500,000 more to build that building. And we made them come back at least 6 times. 6 times to do it. You guys can argue about numbers all you want. You can't lower the standards because we're the government. It just doesn't make sense. And everybody complains about one building, which I won't mention, that that's the entrance in town that they allowed, the steel building in town. And you don't want that to come in the entrance of the north side of town.
All right, I had trustee Pierce's hand up. And I'm scanning the room, his hands go up. I need like little light buttons in front of the.
That's what I'm saying, you should just go in order. Just go
Well,
around.
I like the debate aspect of it a little bit, because,
Well, first of all, the 12 million versus 10, I get you're adding 2 million on for contingencies and the running the sewer and running this and doing that. So I get what you're trying to do there. To touch on trustee Masic's ugly steel building comment, if that's the case, we need to stop the fire department's project over at the first fire, the second fire building, because they're doing a steel addition to their building there, which we approved, and I think you voted yes for. So if we're lowering standards for the fire department, we should, and they're gonna do it in a way that's nice and looks well, looks pleasant, fits into the village, saves them and us, the taxpayers, some money. I think we need to be looking at saving the taxpayers some money. And if it's a steel building or a prefab building or a brick building or something that came from outer space and built it like the pyramids were built, it can be designed in a manner that fits in the environment. So I'm tired of hearing about the steel building and lowering standards.
Steel building with face brick on it, that's what I thought the fire department was gonna be, so if I was duped on that, I was duped on that.
Well, you don't know what we're talking about on this building yet either.
No,
None of us know. None of us know
That's
what we're
what I
talking
just
about.
said.
So
that's
let's,
exactly what I said, so don't make it personal
so
against me.
I'm sure this discussion is not done today, but about the Public Works building. But I think you have more slides, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
So,
I'm done.
you're done?
Go by.
No, that's it?
Well,
Well, we may get more information.
But we've had at least 3 trustees that haven't even said what they feel about the 10 or 12 or $9 million mark, so I don't know how we're building a consensus when we haven't heard from them.
Okay.
I just want
All right.
to make sure that we're
We're all
Dennis,
going
you had
forward.
said that when.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Part
Yeah,
of
so-
the cost, the 10 million, they said that the difference between the 10 and 12 was basically you would have to do away with the mechanical area, which
Well,
is it's not
that-
doable.
That was actually going from 15 down to 12.
15.
They're having a difficult time right now in the design that we have, which was based off of the study of the employees we have along with the equipment. That's simply how the square footage was designed. Basically house everything inside as far as vehicles and equipment, and then create office space for the employees and locker rooms and a few workshops for the sub departments. That's how the building basically was laid out square footage wise. And then we designed it because there was a large knoll or a large hill on that piece of property on Granite. So it was a 2-story. Everything was geared around trying to create a small square footage because we knew the lower the square footage, the lower the cost. Originally, they had a 60,000 square foot building planned for us under the study. And we said we won't be able to do it. It was 20 or $22 million. We got it down to 16, 15 million. That's where we were at. Now we've held them 12 million. And they're basically telling me I have to cut large square footage off.
Yeah, but you just said that it was 10 million and 2 million in extras or leeway. Now you just said it's 12 million just for the building. So which is it?
They're not telling me 12 million. We're basically telling them either 10 or 12 million. They're telling me a cost estimate off of current, pricing and saying this is what it would cost you for this building. So if I say, okay, you're telling me 15 million, I can't, my board's saying 10 or 12. Then they're gonna go, okay, you got to chop it in half and here's what you get. And that's what then I would present to you.
Sure. And I think one of the things maybe learned from the police station is that we need to, obviously build it so it's not obsolete, but then can also expand at some point as the village grows and as there's more public works employees. I think that's an important factor. But my understanding, Brent, is we're saying if we say today, and again, the building may be 8 and there may be 4 in contingencies, or the building may be 11 and there may be $1 million in contingencies. But I think what we're saying today is we have $12 million for you for everything, including engineering and getting utilities there. What can you give to us? I'm not saying that's the number. We may say it's $8 million. I think what Dennis and Jeff are saying is, what they're hearing is in this day and age, it's not feasible. But I'll leave it. I haven't heard from Rebecca. She's been quiet over there. She does her research, so.
Well, I'd like to defer to Dennis because I know you've been operating kind of on a shoestring with your public works as it is, and you've been very budget conscious, I think, for the board for years. I've seen public works in the condition now you're really making do with very little. So if you're telling us this is reasonable, correct? Like you can't really make more cuts and expect to go under 12, is that?
I don't even know if I can
You know,
do the building that they designed for 12 million. Once FQC is fully on board, they're gonna really crunch on all of their estimating, and then they're gonna sit down and go, you need to cut 5,000 square foot out. And then I will start looking at options, whether a mezzanine gets eliminated, which isn't a real large cost, or if I don't do the wash bay, or if I don't do a mechanic shop. Those are the kind of cuts that they're gonna basically tell me, here's what you need to do to get down to $12 million.
I'm gonna, oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
No, show your floor.
With this, are you anticipating that you'll be able to have like the gasoline and everything too for the vehicles?
I immediately pulled the gasoline fueling station out because it was a $500,000 estimate. So I immediately
So
pulled
that's
that out.
scrapped out of that, okay.
I can't pull the salt drum out. A wash bay, I would really like to keep. We're not supposed to wash our vehicles outside. It's against our MPDS permit. The IEPA frowns upon that. So if I don't do the wash bay, I don't have anywhere to clear the salt off or mud off the vehicles. I can't give up the maintenance shop. We maintain the fleet of the village. The rest of that, I could shrink down the heated storage for the dump trucks, pickup trucks and equipment. But they're telling me that even if I cut it in half, it's not gonna reduce it by like $4 million. So I'm still working with FQC and Williams. I'm trying to get towards the $12 million number, but I've already made cuts. Jeff's aware. We sat through a meeting. I took sinks out. I said, can we reduce the restrooms? Take this wall out, make this area bigger, take these windows out of this office area. Trying to, it's nickel and dimes, but anything I could do to get closer to at least a $12 million number, which I think they're struggling with.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to you. I'm gonna put trustee Pearson on the spot. Can't really heard anything from her. I saw trustee Pierce and then Brett. Trustee Peterson, do you have anything?
Right now, no.
Okay. You have your hand up and then.
How much have we spent on the design of this current evolution?
What was our contract? 3,
Yeah, I would have to look at that.
I'll have to look back, trustee.
Well, because somebody said, oh, we may have to spend another $100,000 on redesign. And my thought is, if we, spent $400,000 or $500,000 on design so far, and then we got to spend another $100,000, another $200,000 on redesigning from ground scratch, because it's a ground scratch location. But we end up saving $2 or $3 million. What's the return on investment? Are we doing better by redesigning and just saying, all that was over on Grimm Road, now we got to redesign because this is on Bittner, and we're going to save this much money by redesigning? Or even if we redesign it, we're going to be spending the same amount of money that we're wasting the redesign money. I don't know.
Can I just
Sure.
after that? So with the current design that we have, even if we went on a flat ground, all we would do is take the office space, the admin, and pull it down. It wouldn't be a redesign. It basically sits on top with the mezzanine of some of the underground offices that we incorporated with the heated garage area. And then with the contract that was mentioned, in that contract, it specifies like one schematic design or two schematic designs. It doesn't give you unlimited redesigning of the building. Because of course it costs, the company money for their people to sit there for hours designing it, so.
Are you talking about the contract, about the contract, the original
The
contract
the contract with Williams.
from whenever that was signed, 2019,
Yeah, yes.
2021, whatever that
So
was?
they list in there certain milestones where maybe here's your plan, your layout plan, and then they get in the schematic design. But all of that is listed out with price tags, and it may only say 1 or 2 or 3. So if we go beyond that, they're gonna want more money
Sure.
to do that. That's.
So I understand what you're saying, Scott, that extra money may make sense if it saves on the other end.
Correct.
I see.
I don't know. I haven't heard enough yet to prove whether it does or it doesn't.
Okay, sure, I understand. Trustee Luther.
I want the best building we can afford to get. But what I keep banging my head against is what we did is went with a wish list, like we had unlimited resources and had them design a building with the maximum square footage for everything that you needed in the world plus some for possible expansion. They gave us a price of 15 million. And all of us sat on this board and went, well, that's crazy, we're not gonna do that. Now what we're trying to do is take this plan that we bought, compare it to like a Mercedes with all the options, and we're trying to sit there and remove stuff to get it to where we could get it for the cost of a Lincoln. When what we should be doing is ask the architect to build us a Chevy and then go from there up, because by trying to work with this existing plan that was way out of our price range, of course, anything that we take out of that's not gonna save a lot of money, because they designed it like it was, like a $15 million building. So I'd be in favor of not necessarily starting over, but basically telling them, listen, the instructions you were given to build this in the first place was against what we had talked about as a board. It was something that the village administrator at the time decided to move forward with and everything else. But right now, I'm trying to save this village some money so that if we have to go up to 12 million to get what we need, great. But I don't trust that this building is gonna come in at $12 million based on just what you've said today alone. Tells me that we're not gonna be at $12 million, because you've already said it 3 or 4 times that if we even remove this, it doesn't save us a lot, and we're still at the 12 million. And then what about the additionals and the add-ons? This is gonna be that $12 million building. If we go out there and say, design this and give approval on it, it's gonna be $14 to $15 million by the time it's done. Easily. Because it's not gonna be built this year at these prices. It's gonna be built next year or the year after, and those prices are gonna be another $1 million or 2 above that. So I'd like to see us start lower. That would be my suggestion, even if we need to, like Trustee Pierce mentioned, start with new drawings and then go from there. Make a building that's expandable, that we can always add on to if we have additional money or funds available. I don't think we need to build the maximum amount for that dollar amount. I think we need to build what you need and then add to it as we go further down the road. That gives us money for additional capital projects or the overages that we know we're all gonna have.
Dennis, yeah, and I think, with Dennis, and I think Zeta, we'll go back to the presentation. I think that gives staff a good idea of what to talk to FQC about and where the board lands, between the, pricing. So Dennis, go. I saw, Trustee Berman's hand up, and then we'll see where it goes.
So the only reason why we went the route we did with the space needs and understand what size building we needed is because we don't know what size building we need, because we're working on a double wide trailer. And it's very common practice that the architects work with fire department, police department, village hall, public works, and they do a space need and say, okay, you have all this stuff, here's the square footage. That's how it gets set. If I was to say, build me $8 million or build me a building for $8 million, they're gonna go, okay, what do you want? How many employees do you have? How much, so that's why we went that route. It's because that's standard procedure to develop how much square footage you need. Now we're saying, okay, it's way out of our budget. And they're saying cut square footage. If that's the direction I get, then that's what I have to relay to them. I don't think they're gonna redesign something other than cutting the building down 25% or in half to meet whatever figure you're comfortable with.
We get to that point, with parking things outside again, right?
Yes.
That's where we're heading next. Yeah.
Have you gone and looked at some of these other Because I know there's buildings with mezzanines and the layout that we're currently planning. And I know there's buildings like that I looked at. I know there's buildings in between. Have you gone field tripping to some of them?
Yes.
Okay.
Trustee Burban?
I kind of feel that, there has been quite a bit of pressure placed on Dennis's shoulders. I think that he's done a fantastic job of trying to shake off everything that he possibly can. Public works is really important. I mean, it's an important part of the town, you know, I think I said this before, to keep our water clean. That's, you know, health reasons. I guess for me, it's a little frustrating because we do, you know, obviously we don't want to spend tons and tons of, you know, money that we don't need to on something, but what I get from Dennis and from Jeff is that, you know, we're at a point right now where we're not even sure if it can be done at that 12 million, but we're still trying to, I don't want to say it's bored, but we're wanting to start way lower than that. And they're trying to say that it's not doable. And, you know, we wanted to build a park that was going to last for a long time and have something that was really nice. Well, we need that for public works too. Like, I just don't see any way around at this point with the way things are, especially with the way that they're working. I mean, I don't know how much longer we can expect them to work.
Okay, Rebecca?
Oh, just a quick question. I don't know if Dennis can answer this, but kind of like Trustee Berman said, even if let's just say we scrapped it, we started over, just correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not a lot of bells and whistles to the building, right? It's mostly square footage. It's kind of like a box, if I recall the drawing. We're not adding like frills or extras, to my recollection. Is there anything that you can, I mean,
No,
could you envision a different building, in your opinion?
the only area that you're gonna change, is the administration part of it, which I think is 2,000 square feet, if I recall. You know, I mentioned to Williams and FGC, maybe could we stick build that and use more of a engineered siding with a little bit of stonework? Would that save versus, using precast? You know, block is out of the question. That's expensive right now. Outside of that, the heated garage area is all precast concrete. They put windows in there just for daylight, so you would reduce on the amount of electricity. Those could be easily removed. And that's one of the items they'll look at. Outside of that, the building, I think originally they showed the windows on the front of it they had, and then I immediately told them, no, that was not the look I was going for. The sloped roofs that were presented, there's not really an added cost. They were just trying to make it, you know, look a little unique since it was just kind of a concrete precast building. So, yeah, it's really gonna come down to large square footage is what I'm being told.
So I'm gonna make a suggestion, not just to keep the meeting going, is that on the June 12th meeting, we'll make sure that FQC or somebody is available as part of their initial contract, which it says they're included in the amount. And in the meantime, Dennis and Jeff will indicate to them where the board stands between this 8 and 12 million figure and see what they could, you know, what they could do in, you know, 8 or 10 or 12 in that range, and present a couple options to the board, or come to us and understand, you know, why that can't work, and then also maybe answer that question, well, would it be cheaper if we started from scratch and had a whole new design and scrap the original design? And I think they can probably answer those questions for us to keep the process moving. But I think generally, you guys have a good idea. And again, this is the budgeted number. This is what we've gone with, what I say is worst case scenario or highest number on this budget right now. But I think the board, you know, it varies on feelings, but I think it's been heard that $8 to $12 million is probably the range, and they have to prove to us why it can't be done for the other amounts.
Can I just say one thing? We can beat this dog to death,
Sure.
obviously. We can stay here for another 8 hours.
Oh, we would.
discussing this thing. We would. You're right, we would. I mean, it comes down to counting the votes, and I'm counting at least 4 votes to proceed forward as it is right now. I could be wrong, but just from the discussion, I'm counting 4 votes to proceed forward. And possibly 5 or maybe 6. So I think you just need direction from the board right now to proceed forward as they are and not waste everybody's time with other meetings and more meetings, having staff work, do all this paperwork and stuff. And come up and do these presentations again at the next quarterly meeting. So you ask the board now,
Sure.
how many are in favor of just proceeding forward as you've got it presented right now? And trust the staff to come back and say, hey, we found a $2 million savings, or sorry, we gotta spend another $1 million.
We can take a,
And just see where we're at. So
We can take- we can
we
take
can
a
waste time
poll.
on this
Yeah.
for months.
I mean, let's take a poll with, proceeding at the number that's presented of the board members. You rate by hand is fine, or, if by hand to proceed with the Public Works building at the 12 million all in. I have trustee Berman,
Most likely, it would be helpful to see the information, I
Sure,
think,
see
from
the
FTC,
drawing.
just to make sure that,
yeah,
I
trustee
think that we all
Peterson,
feel comfortable as a board, that there's no
trustee
other.
Masek, do you,
Yeah, I trust staff. As long
Okay.
as long as
So
it's not gonna
3,
go against my parameters.
3.5?
I think they kind of are
Yeah,
parameters.
I think they're, I think they're, so
I would say
let's
4.
proceed, let's proceed for, I will say this, I've been through 2 budget seasons with, Denny, and he will not spend money in that unnecessarily, so I'll tell you that. All right, so, all right, thank you, and then let's Zeta finish her presentation, maybe take a little
No,
break.
it's just goodbye, that's it, I
That's
was
it?
serious.
That was it? That was it? Okay, then let's, well, let's take, let's see, so we talked about public works,
He's not even awake.
funding sources, prioritization. Let's take a 5-minute break, get a coffee, water, sandwich, and then reconvene by 1:30 with the goal again of being out of here by 3 hard stop, all right? Thank you. All right, let's move on to the rest of the meeting and get everybody on their way. So I think the next thing we should discuss is just any updates on the parks, master plan implementation, maybe an update between Jim and Jeff on what they've done recently with requesting grant money for certain parts of it, and then implementation of the plan for, this year, I believe, the don't hold me to this, but I think we had put 20,000 aside for the sawmill. And then there's some money, like 350 in the budget for pickleball courts and a couple of items. And I know we put in for the, Oslid grant. And I don't know if that delays the pickleball court implementation, or if we have a plan for that.
Yeah, so Barry and I actually discussed that this week. We have a feeling that pickleball is probably going to be a thing at some scale within Centennial Park. But what she tells me, the demand for pickleball courts will exceed that capacity.
Sure.
That's growing.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
We had 350,000 budgeted this current year to do pickleball courts. So right now, we're looking at proceeding with the original plan
Jensen.
of Jensen
Okay.
Park.
I do look at absolutely Antioch sometimes. I did see some complaints about the condition of the pickleball courts. We were at ICSC last week, and it was more of an indoor feature courts, but I don't know if we can consider, instead, I guess you could rip them up and put them down, but it appears nowadays they have these like, I wouldn't say they're plastic, but they're kind of a raised with holes on them, courts that are, I'm sure the vendors will tell you all different kinds, but I've seen more places kind of using the actual, like it's an overlay on the course that may be something that saves us money and not having to rip up the whole thing. But I've seen those a couple times recently.
Yeah, I don't know personally, maybe Dennis would have more information, but
Is there a pickleball player in the room?
like at Jensen Park, I'm understanding it's the base that everything is poured on is pretty poor condition.
It's more just the age. It's a gravel base with an asphalt course above it. It's a very thin liner. came basically over time with the weather conditions that we experienced. The asphalt has basically started to separate and creating large cracks, so I don't think the base would have to be removed, but it is that top layer of asphalt, whether you put asphalt or stack or concrete or whatever they use nowadays for, golf course. The original design, I would assume that the designs are the same.
Yeah.
for football.
I think that just,
Well, the one that you saw, that we saw in Vegas was asphalt, he was even saying it's asphalt top, and then they just overlay it over top of it. So it just it's a waffled material, plastic waffle material that can be removed, but taken in and out, but subsurface itself is what we're talking about right now. That would still be the same, whether it's traditional core or this new updated core.
and my thought was, I don't know what these things cost, but you may be able to put some in Jensen Court and some over in like Springer Court on the other side of town, like fairly easily based on what these cost. I
The
don't,
overlay was a $50,000 cost per core,
50?
50.
Okay.
So that was just taking existing subsurface and then put the overlay on top of it.
Okay,
But that's
so-
with a perfect surface.
Okay, so it's a thought, but it looks like we're going looking towards Jensen Court again, Jensen, and then maybe Springer's another place to look at that since it's on the other side of town. Seems to get a lot of activity in that park too from New Haven or whatever.
They have existing tennis courts.
Oh, yeah. Any other question? Oh, Katrina.
I have a quick question, comment. Well, Jensen Park, that's by me, so I'm trying to, there's only one parking lot for that area, correct?
Yeah, it's a very limited. park.
I do have some concerns about that, for traffic. I know there's multiple ways to get in that way, but.
I couldn't find the park. I
Should
looked for it.
be, it's very.
Which one?
it's very-
Jensen,
I've never seen it.
But it's
20
like-
years I've never seen it.
Honestly, it's like getting through Village Hall, finding that park. It's like amazing. It's like
Yeah,
amazing to get there.
But it's concerning because we're right off of Main, so I recommend that might be like, to get there.
Yeah.
And it's tucked back like that and,
Sure.
issues with people racing out there, so I'm kind of concerned about it. If that's gonna be the sole, like.
And that's why I'm really suggesting we look at Springer too, because that's on the other side of town and you have some on each side of town and that has a ton of parking and, is a big
Centennial
park.
doesn't have much parking either.
No, not now. The new plan might,
Oh,
but
Jensen.
I don't think we have much traffic for a pickleball court all the time. It's gonna be a couple people
Yeah.
here, a couple people there.
We're not talking about
Jensen
it
now.
Are we for the pickleball? Is that scratched? I feel like that was in here at some point.
I think there's leagues playing at Jensen now.
There is,
Um,
it's pretty active.
no, I mean, we can talk about, well, that might be, that we can talk about it, and then one of the items is the Parks Co-op, which I'd just like to bring up at that point, but yes, I mean,
Yeah, I was only concerned, and Dennis might know about this, but I know like at the high school, my sister coaches tennis, all their tennis courts are sinking in, so I just wasn't sure that that would be a suitable land for
Osmond
pickleball.
Park,
Yeah.
oh, I see what you're saying. because of the-
Yeah, on the,
Would you agree with that?
on
I
the
don't
old
know.
hot site,
Yeah,
yeah, part of it, that's that. That's basically, the garbage decomposes, the grade on that hill is going to change, and that's what the high school's experience, so yeah, I would.
there's not like reference in here, I'm like, I think we need to mix that, because they can't even play at the high school, they all go to lakes.
Okay.
So,
And one of the other items, those are the two main items we had budgeted for parks this
Yeah.
year, right? And if we can do this for less than $350, I mean, I don't think $20,000 is gonna do anything legitimate for the sawmill, so if there's anything, an overage, I'd like to see us like maybe update, start working towards, I don't, what does a sawmill need repair? I mean, you guys work on it all the time, right? What does a sawmill in need
So
of,
the
other than
the
the
wheel.
The
The
wheel?
Yeah, the main item that was brought to my attention was a wheel, and I looked at it, and the issue with that is all that lumber is custom, you don't call Menards and say, I wanna order a sawmill wheel. That's gotta be done by a professional, and, there's limited access, so I don't know what types of cranes they're gonna use. Again, that lumber's gotta be cut on a mill, some of those pieces are very large.
Do we have local contractors or people that would work in that field?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's local mills around.
Plus landscaping of that pond, 'cause that pond's caught a lot of a lot of debris from Seapoint Creek and the collapse above it. So that whole thing needs to be
Yep, dredge.
cleaned out, dredged, and the bushes and the trees growing into the side of the sawmill, they all need to be gone.
Okay,
I'd like to
Yes.
say something about
Yes.
that. I've heard over the years, that people move here and they don't understand why the wheel isn't moving, and I completely understand why the wheel isn't moving, because there's a deck there. However, I'm wondering if we're gonna replace that, if we could just think about maybe pumping water over that wheel. Make it look like it's running.
Pretty sure that could be entertained. I mean,
I think as long as it doesn't cost a fortune, but I just thought it would add to the look of it and, kind of give it the look that it used to have without the danger of that wheel actually turning. Just throwing it out there. That's it.
all right, I asked the question, didn't let him answer it, so why don't you guys talk about the grants that you put in for with the state and other organizations?
So, I believe, did you update the board on the Schneider downtown?
No, you can go do it, all
The
you,
last meeting.
Okay,
okay,
so that, on my list of stuff, that's the first thing that we have an basket for, so that's $580,000 for downtown sidewalk improvements and ADA compliance along Main and Lake. And then also, we're working, there were 2 grant opportunities previously that the village had kind of gotten awarded that had fallen apart, so we're trying to.
no, we got awarded, they just never sent us the money.
Yeah, so we're trying to get our money for the Crest Hill sanitary project and also for the Route 59 bike path. That we've asked $750,000 each for those, so that's $1.5 million that we're asking the state government right now to help with funding for those 2 projects. And then, we're in the process, you guys approved going forward with the OSLAD grant for Centennial Park, for the Centennial Park Master Plan and the OSLAD grant application. So that's up to $600,000 in funding. We'll know once the plan comes together, what our ask will be with that. I found out today, the deadline for the application, I think, is September 13th. And then we'll find out in January or February next year whether or not we get the funding for that. And oh yeah, we just put together a plan. DCEO has a Main Street program that they announced grant funding for. And I think it's up to $2 million or $2.5 million in funding that has a 25% cost share that goes with it. So we put together an initial pitch that we reviewed with DCEO, and then we're gonna go forward with the formal application to update the band shell area that aligns with the Lakota Group downtown master plan that we passed a few years ago. So this was one part of the plan that was not cost prohibitive by the limits of the grant. So we're gonna move forward and try to get grant funding to update the band shell area, make the modifications along Skidmore, the parking lot, that sort of thing.
And when he says modifications, the plan basically made it 1 amphitheater, rerouted Skidmore behind the band shell, gave more seating area, more of a 1 contiguous amphitheater without the road running through there, so that's.
Started working towards that connection of the new village hall with that parcel with the new park.
Correct.
Nice.
And then I think there was another more Rebuild Illinois funds that I saw potentially we might for more Main Street grant money at some point, but I can't remember where we were in that process. There's been so many of them just recently that we've applied for. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically our frame of mind is going after money that would offset money that we would like to spend anyways. So it's not like we're going out and creating wish lists or anything like that. It's money that would need to be spent one way or another. So we're identifying ways to offset that as much as we can.
What would be our
portion of these grants. I mean, let's say we roll, perfect hand and we get all these grants. Do we have the funds available, or how much would we have to come up with to get to actually receive them and do the project?
So the stuff we've already asked for, like the $580,000 from the federal government that we've asked, covers our expenses for the downtown sidewalk. So based on the calculation Michael came up with on square footage and all that stuff, we were able to come up with our project cost, and that's what we asked for. And the same thing with what we're asking the state for should cover at least most of it. I don't know.
I think the only one that had a match was a DC, ours is a match. DCO, he said it's a match of 25%. So if they give us $2 million, we have to come up with $500.
And we have the ability to come up with that.
Yeah, and then we're gonna have this money in the capital.
Well, no, I just wanted to make sure we weren't applying for something, having to say, oh, we can't do it now.
Yeah.
So,
One of the things I've learned is, in previous communities, if you ask for money and you end up not using it, then you really reduce your chances.
Chance of getting it again, yes.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Let me think about, funding sources, projects. I think we're good through all the discussions on capital right now. Obviously, I'll work on having FQC at one of our June meetings to kind of give us a update for, during a cow of where they are in the process, if there's anything to report. I assume, they might have some basic stuff to report. Next item, anyone else on the capital stuff that they want to bring up?
I just have one quick question on that is, in regards to, we were talking about the pickleball courts and everything else, do we have a timeline? Because there is a lot of interest in that, and we budgeted for it, and there's a lot of interest in the community to have them built this year. So I was just wondering, do we have a timeline on when we're gonna make that final decision, when it's gonna go out for bids or anything like that, or do we have any indication?
I don't believe there's that on the bids yet. That's why when I saw these, I say, they're not I don't know what they're made of. What's the material? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's a plastic material, it's a plastic waffle.
It's like a waffle, and those might be, very, you might be able to get those in pretty quick.
Well, it sounds like they need a good solid surface, which ours aren't anymore, so it doesn't seem like that would be a
And I
good.
think maybe inside the old senior center. Yeah, I think the heights are different for the nets, right, than regular tennis court, but, okay. Is it, all right,
Well, if we can just do something on that.
Yeah,
Get something out to the public,
Sure,
because
let's
there's a
start.
lot of interest on that.
okay, we'll start working with Marion Parks, and, why don't, when's it, I know they canceled the one park board meeting, when's the next one?
So
Middle-
in Jensen, they did retrofit some of those courts. So a lot of those courts that were tennis courts have been retrofitted.
Yeah, but they're complaining about the. cost.
Yeah, I know, I'm just saying, but there's uses out there right
Yeah.
now, but they, yes.
All right, I'm gonna let Dennis bring up one thing, and I'm gonna bring up one thing that is, hopefully I don't regret this, but I probably will. One of the things we definitely look at, I'm sick of hearing about, is that walking path, bike path between by Woods of Antioch and the flooding there. I mean, it's not gonna happen overnight. But can we consider, like, the Forest Preserve has, maybe just scrapping it and putting the like the wooden type of, like, raised walkways they do through the wetlands or something. I don't know what we could do, but the history on this is it was done once by the contractor. We had them out again years ago. They did it again. They didn't fix it. Jim Keim refused to pay them for their job. And then they started calling trustees and emailing trustees, and they didn't get paid because they didn't do the job right. And it's still an obvious issue that keeps coming up. So, maybe we look at some of this money and looking at a walking, I guess it's used quite often, but I don't know. I'm not an engineer, but maybe there's something like they have in the Forest Preserve.
When it was built, though, everyone
boardwalk.
knew it was being built in a floodplain.
Yeah, so I can give a little background on it. And
Sorry, Dennis, I apologize in advance.
No. So we did run into a problem. It was engineered, not original, when we just recently went to basically resurface it and do enhancements in raising it at two different locations. The one by Osmond Park, which is right off of Hillside there and Westgate, that's where it's currently flooding. We did go back to the contractor, said this was not done correctly. A lot of back and forth. They wound up basically not proving up and correcting it. We didn't return the retainage, and we hired a contractor and we raised it within the limit that we originally designed. It is in the floodplain, so you are very limited as to the activity that you can do, which we did raise it. So there was an area that was dug out where the helicopter lands. And that's what we call compensatory storage. If we wanted to raise it more, we would have to dig more out. That's an area where the parks goes to play, people are over there playing soccer, and the helicopter can still land. There's also wetlands in between the path and the creek, which we can't disturb. There's houses that are adjacent to the south that if we raise that path up any more than we did, we would then flood them. They already flood currently. We would have made the situation worse. So that's how we basically came to the situation that we have, which I think is a very good situation. Does it flood every now and then? Yes. Just because of the elevation of that path and what the creek gets at a certain time of events, we've received like 10 inches of rain within the past 3-4 weeks. That's not our normal situation, and that's not the normal creek level. We did look at the wooden walks. I forget what the expense was. It was a much larger expense than what we spent just on the repairs that we made to those two areas. And we looked at the long-term maintenance of it. It's, you know, it's more expensive to maintain over many years. And taking into consideration how many times of the year that path could possibly be underwater versus the maintenance and cost of the bridge, it seemed that we were better off to go with the route that we did. Last year, I think it was maybe underwater once, if that, and the year before. This year, we've had a lot of rain. It was underwater, then everything receded, now it's underwater again. Very little bit right now. There is a pipe that links it back to the creek for drainage, but when the creek's up so high, it vacuums the pipe. There's nothing we could do with that, just do the elevation. So.
And excuse me, when it was built, when Marilyn was mayor, Marilyn Scheinfeld, she said it's in floodplain. We either build it or we don't build it. And it's just gonna be, you know, weeds. This is kind of the best case scenario. We're not infringing on a wetland. We're using it for a walking path. We're not gonna flood the neighbors. And if it gets flooded when we have a huge amount of rain a couple times a year, then we have to put up with that. It's in a floodplain. So we've had it for what, 30 years now? There's nothing we can do about it.
And it doesn't flood like it used to.
No.
I mean, it used to be, it would flood and it'd be a lake for the whole summer because there was no backflow or anything. Now it floods for a week and then it's gone. It ain't worth the time and effort because I remember they talked about the wood walkway and it was over $1 million more than what we paid for. I think we did like $800,000 for this.
That was $350 what we spent a couple of years ago to do that.
Okay.
300 or 350.
But I remember it was well over $1 million to put a wood walkway across there and a lot more hoops and jumps for SMC and all these other people. It wasn't, unfortunately, it's in a floodplain. It does the best it could do. And
The alternative is not having it and just taking it out and be done with it.
and
But
putting in all sorts of butterfly plants and call it a butterfly reserve, which we should still have over there anyway.
everybody, I mean, the people use it and they're just gonna have to understand that when we get this kind of rain, they can't use it.
And most people, I think, make do and you can pipe up on by the trees and get around. Sherry in my office, we get around it right now.
Yeah.
So I think the majority understand that, but yeah.
And there's always gonna be someone complaining about it, but it is what it is. It's where it is and
Just want to get around with the senior housing project. I understand there's a lot of work that needs
can't
to be
fix
done
it.
there as well, that maybe you could look at possible improvements to it then, but in the short term, there's really not. So
that we can do.
Is there any- This is, so it seems like there's some people that they can't find certain things. But is there any way that basically like what we just discussed, is there a way to either
Maybe timeline or synopsis?
something like that to just put it out there for people so that it doesn't explode on Facebook?
I'll volunteer Rachel to put together a timeline. She's
You know.
probably watching. Sorry, Rachel.
Well.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know the history of it either. But, I know that the second time around, when they were emailing us about payment, I knew there was a reason why we didn't pay them, so. All right, then, you want to talk about the, Rebuild Illinois
Yeah, so
money?
I noticed Zeta put the Rebuild Illinois on there, which, we have, and I just wanted to bring it up for discussion because those funds are like MFT, you can't use them just anywhere. And originally, the Rebuild Illinois was, I think, 900 and some odd thousand, and that was allocated for Grim Road. We spent roughly 400, I think we have like 480, somewhere around, close to 500,000 left to spend. Those funds need to be reallocated since we're not moving forward with Grim Road. They have to be allocated by the end of this year and used for May of next year, I believe, or under contract. So I came up with a plan. I've already kind of developed it. So hopefully you don't get angry with me, but being that, and at the June 12th board meeting, I plan to present a service agreement for Woods of Antioch, the engineering portion of it, surveying, soil boring, and so forth for the whole project. And part of the problem is to do the whole area of the concrete roadway, do all of this engineering. I would not be able to get out the bid to do any work this year. So I'm taking a two-phased approach. First phase is trying to do as much as I can including engineering costs for 400,000 as what was in the budget. And then the remainder expense of engineering the rest of the project and so forth. I want to do that kind of coincide with that phase one and call it phase two for next year, to utilize that engineering that they would do on the area outside of phase one, what would be done this year, and introduce the RBI funds allocated for the Woods Banning. So I could use some of the RBI funds for the whole engineering, and next year add it to the 400,000 and have a bigger program and hopefully accomplish a lot more of the rebuilding of those roads.
Was the total number 400 on there that we had in the six?
For Rebuild Illinois, we have 600.
600, okay.
So if we have 600,000, then.
Well, I think that's what it's supposed to be used for, right? We talk about Woods of Antioch, yeah.
It's basically
Makes sense
like
to me to do
MFT.
it.
You pretty much can only use them on roadway projects, and they're very specific where you can't use it on like a maintenance. So I've already started the process. HR Green, our engineering consultant, allocated the funds for Grim Road. So I've advised them that I'd like to reallocate it. They basically submit their work down to IDOT and reallocate it to the Woods of Antioch, which then if I can reallocate it before December, and we hopefully go out to bid before May for next year's program, I can get under contract, not necessarily start, but have those funds tied to a contract before the deadline.
Cool. So the plan, Dennis, so some work will be done this year. A limited amount of work, right?
Yes.
And then hopefully next year will be closer to $1 million.
Yes.
In that.
Currently, right now, we have a plan to do hopefully all of the cul-de-sacs. I think one we probably won't be able to do under the current estimates. So I would go in and do all the cul-de-sacs, which there's two of them that are pretty bad. One way up kind of in the northwestern quadrant of that subdivision. So I would get hopefully at least the majority of the cul-de-sacs done, which would be good because if we did the roadway, then the contractor would be driving over new roadway to get down cul-de-sacs. So if I can get the cul-de-sacs done this year, or the majority of them, next year I can focus on the roadway from those cul-de-sacs going in either direction. And we'll kind of know how much the funding and how far we'll be able to get. So it'll reduce the amount of time frame we were originally looking at, like 7 years or something like that. 'Cause I think if we keep going at it, especially with the RBI fund, we might be able to do it in 3 or 4 years. So,
Wow,
So,
that's fantastic.
so essentially though, right now you had 400,000 budgeted there.
yes.
And if you bootstrap this into that, we're going from 400 to $1 million investment right now
For next year.
for next year.
Yeah, by the time I reallocate the funds, the paperwork and the state approving it and bringing it to the board, we wouldn't be able to draft the contract and have it completed by fall. So that's why I wanted to take it, reallocate it, use some of it for the engineering that we're gonna need to do, not pertaining to just what the program is this year, because I need to do engineering on the whole subdivision. But if I can minimize it for this year and then get that out the bid, I can let them do the engineering on the rest of the subdivision, paying a little bit out of RBI funds for this year. And then next year, whatever's left, be able to put everything plus the 400, hopefully that's budgeted for next fiscal year and get close to $1 million for next year.
I think it sounds like, unless I hear any objection, I think that sounds like a good plan. The use of that money. Okay. All right. Since we're talking about spending money on parks, I'm gonna bring this next item to the board. So I've spoken to Supervisor Shaughnessy several times, many times, including Jim Kime when he was administrator, now Jeff as the administrator, regarding the park co-op. And so a little history lesson on the park co-op, and I told Tom about the meeting today, maybe he's listening, but the park co-op was formed 20 years ago. The agreement from 20 years ago just expired this spring. The park co-op was originally for the building and shared funding for the building of Marina Park and Osmond Park. So during the Osmond Park building, the village and the township worked together. I don't know how they pulled funds or what the percentages were to get that park completed. After that was completed, kind of fell apart, I'll use for lack of a better term. And there's very strict rules and procedures to be followed for that co-op. There's supposed to be a specific board for the co-op. It's supposed to include certain members from the village and the township. They're supposed to meet regularly to agree on expenses and maintain the fields. Fast forward through time, I believe for a while, the village was maintaining a lot of the fields, including Osmond Park on our dime. The last 5 years or so, the township has been really maintaining for the most part, and I believe the village too, to some degree.
Yeah.
The park, Osmond Park, the big Osmond Park, and the township has then gone ahead and been maintaining some of their competitive baseball fields, football fields on their own dime, but at their own fruition. So Tom and I have discussed many times that, oh, we've been doing this. There's some money owed back to the township. So Tom, the agreement says we're supposed to be meeting and agreeing on the fees. And my opinion is that agreement is null and void, and looking backwards doesn't make sense. Am I willing to consider something going forward for park maintenance or long-term agreements for how we're going to maintain and upkeep parks? However, whether our parks department grows or retracts, but I want to get the board's feel for this. If there was an independent board that paid for those, that voted on and expended funds and we contributed to that, I want to know the board's feeling on it.
I'll start
So for the large Osmond Park, all positive, like Vikings organization, they pay, that has a lot to do with why a lot of times fees go up, depending on what they're being charged to play there. But to my understanding, not all of the, not everybody's paying, not all the leagues for certain things here and there. So I don't know if that, I don't know if that might be something we can discuss and look at.
Sure.
Kind of.
I think what's been happening is, Tom has been charging them a fee to use the fields, Vikings, maybe the baseball teams, and charging like an annual maintenance fee or whatever. Whether they've agreed to pay that or not, or voted on it, or however that came to be. I think some pay, some don't, like you say. And like I said, some of the stuff, some of the competitive fields, township is kind of just taking it under their wing to maintain. And we've kind of sat back and said, okay. And many times we've maintained stuff prior to that or alongside that and on our dime. So the concept of a foundation or a co-op or something that with pooled funds and maintain these fields is not something that I think is impossible or can't be entertained. But I just want to know what the, I've had at least 15 conversations with Tom about this, and I need the board's direction on this. And some people may have been on the board when the co-op was passed and what the initial intent was. So that's kind of where I stand. What's that?
Some people.
Well, two of you.
It was passed with the best of intentions but it never went anywhere. The village kind of kept the ball rolling, organized who was using the Parks Department, organized who was using it. And then all of a sudden, at some point, it just like the township took it over and it just exploded into what it is now. And it's a beautiful, beautiful park. But a lot of that work there that was done, digging out the ponds, taking out all the brush, I don't think that was ever discussed with anybody. I don't think the village, it just happened. I mean, we didn't take out the brush, did we? We didn't take out the ponds, did we? I
And
mean-
put the disc golf in, we didn't do that.
No, we were involved with the disc golf. Yeah, but it's like,
It was improved.
I mean, and I love Tom to death. I mean, I love Mr. Shaughnessy to death, and I think he does a lot, and he's made it very nice over there. But he's not done it in cooperation with the village or planning with the village or anything of that nature. It's been more of a takeover. And if he takes it over, he takes over the response. He should have at least come to us and said, this is my plan. I'm gonna be dredging out all the ponds. I'm gonna be clearing out all the brush. I'm gonna be making walking paths. He should have come to us and discussed it with us. And then he does it to the tune of $500,000 or more. And then, or maybe $1 million. I don't know the exact numbers. I keep hearing different numbers. Then he comes in and says, I want my money. That ain't right.
Anybody else? Trustee Luther?
Yeah. This is a huge issue. I mean, this is something we're not gonna decide.
Yeah, no, I just want to get the temperature of the board today because I guarantee I'll have more conversations about this.
I mean, I have some major concerns about when the term co-op is brought up, and obviously I wasn't on the board when it passed, and since I've been on it, I don't think anyone's come to us about any expenses, asking us to pay them or do anything else, at least to my knowledge. Looking back on it, I don't wanna see us go back and reimburse for charges that we didn't have any approval or say in from the get-go. I don't even know if legally we can do that, but, so I'm not in favor of any type of past reimbursement. Moving forward, I'm 100% against any type of co-op that gives control of our park or park district, or not park district, but employees or operations to anyone that's not controlled by the village. Now, if there's a way of doing some type of co-op where the village is in charge of it, that might be something I would consider. I don't like, I don't want to get into a role of everything that we're doing for our community, we're going to turn over to somebody else. We've turned over seniors to the township already. I don't want to turn over parks to the township or some new co-op board. I will say that there might come a point in time in the near future that there might be a need for a park district in this area. And that would be something that I think is the next logical step other than a co-op. I know that would require voter approval and everything else, but that would be something that looking forward, if the village residents wanted to do, that would be something they'd have to approve. And that would be a board that would be elected that would then collect their own taxes and control the park systems like that. If we're trying to unite the township and the village in a form, that would be the way, in my vision, to go. And then let the residents decide whether they want a park district or they want it to be kept the same. In regards to any improvements at Osmond Park that the township wants to bring to us, it should be brought to us like any other project, and if we can afford it and budget it and approve it as a board, then we'll move forward. If not, if the township wants to do something on their own, that's up to them, but it should be something that's brought to us prior to an expenditures, and because we shouldn't be letting them do stuff and then come to us and say, you owe us half.
Let me, oh, yeah, sure.
When that park, I believe, there was an intergovernmental agreement. There was an Osland grant given to us for that park. And in order to get it, we had to have an intergovernmental
Okay,
agreement.
makes sense. I've heard there was awesome.
Yeah, so we wouldn't have gotten the grant.
Yeah.
To do that park if the township, and I think the school district was involved as well.
Well, let me throw out a crazy concept.
Pardon me?
It was
Yeah.
super fun.
Oh, yeah, it's the waste management.
Yes, so
Well, then we had a falling out with school district because they bought all the land around it.
No way.
Yeah.
Can't believe that.
Yeah.
Let me just throw out a crazy idea, okay? Just this is like I said, it's a much bigger discussion than today. I've already indicated, like, anything in the past is in the past. There's something moving forward. What I could envision eventually happening was, the township's gonna have some indoor gym space. The township does handle the senior services. I could see a maintenance agreement where maybe, we had a third-party contractor maintaining these fields, there's a cost-sharing thing, or the village, parks board kind of became a co-op type board with some township people on it. I could see that happening, or maybe some value to that, but I have not been able to come to a solution in my mind that makes sense for the village right now without a legal agreement being drafted that lays all this out for how this will work in the future. So,
I think we need to look at the original contract
Mhm.
between, because I'm not sure if we divide this up, if we get out of this agreement, do we ever have to pay back a grant? Because,
well, the agreement expired in this year. It was 2024, early this year, so that's expired.
okay, so we would not have to pay back that grant that we got if it all falls
Can
apart.
we mute that part of the meeting? I'm kidding. No, I don't believe so. No, I'm serious. I don't believe so.
Okay, good,
I think that's the way, there's probably statute limitations on that, but
good.
And the original agreement, if I remember correctly, was we were in charge.
there was a charge, there's gonna be a board of a hybrid of like two
Yeah.
board village people, and they were gonna approve all expenses and everything that went forward, but that board never seemed, maybe it was there, but it seemed to come apart.
I never saw it.
Okay.
Something else to consider is there's always been a long-term desire down in Springfield by some to eliminate township government. And I don't know what the current status is in Springfield, if they're looking at that or anything else, but I'd hate to get into a long-term agreement and have it eliminated anytime soon, so.
I don't know how much, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Of course.
I don't know how much traction that has with the current composition of the leadership of the House. An elimination of township government.
Well, this is a bigger discussion. I just want to get temperature of the board on it. It's gonna be something that we are gonna continually probably discuss until there's, a firm decision. I probably would put this on one more board meeting. We were supposed to have a presentation of the fountains, but I don't see the consultant online. So I don't think that's gonna happen today, unfortunately. When does this need to be like programmed?
The fountains.
Like the different displays of the water splash pad stuff?
And we can always change the program.
Okay.
It's not, it's not set in stone, whatever gets put in tomorrow.
But what I would like to do is I would like to have the vendors send us a couple examples of the different levels of, I thought they were gonna do some animations for us that we'd be able to see. I'd like that to get emailed to the board and have it for discussion at the first meeting in June, so we can look at that. Kind of give us some direction in that regard. All right, is there anything else anyone wants to talk about? All right, can I get a motion to adjourn and everybody everyone have a nice Memorial Day weekend. Motion trustee Peterson, second trustee Berman, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Meeting adjourned at 2:20. Have a good weekend.